Oh look, another Iceberg video. How original. The topic of this video is crypto, and no, I don't mean cryptocurrency. I mean cryptozoology. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, it's the study of creatures whose existence is disputed. Some of these creatures include
Sasquatch, Godzilla, King Kong, Loch Ness, Goblin, Ghoul, a zombie with no conscience.
Now, cryptozoology has been dismissed as pseudoscience, but that's just the government trying to cover up the truth. Don't believe the propaganda. Cryptozoology is as valid as biology and astrology. Now, I'm gonna warn you guys, this video features some very disturbing and gruesome footage. But enough about my face. As I've said, this is an iceberg video. If you don't know what an iceberg chart is, they're just a way to sort information from most known to least known. I've left a link of the iceberg chart I'm using for this video in the comments, so feel free to open that up and follow along with me as I go. Oh, and before I forget, big shout out to Reddit user Suffer the Kids for making this chart. But as you can see, this chart is pretty beefy, so I think I gotta get this intro over with before I bore you guys. Bigfoot, aka Sasquatch. We're starting off strong. Bigfoot is probably the most well-known cryptid. Bigfoot was originally just a local legend in the Pacific Northwest, but he's been made famous by this tape. This is known as the Peterson-Gimlin film, and you may look at this and say, that is clearly a man in a monkey suit. But for others, this is proof of the existence of Bigfoot. Also, fun fact, the Sasquatch depicted in this video is apparently a female, and her name is Patty. Now that I think about it, she is kind of thick. Since the release of this video, thousands of sightings of the elusive creature have happened. There was even a show on Animal Planet called Finding Bigfoot that lasted 12 seasons. Yo, you've been searching for 12 seasons, you still can't find that mother sucker? Patterson found him on day one. Either you need to find a new profession or he's not real, bro. I don't know what else to tell you. Gigantic octopus. Okay, before I talk about this one, if you have thalassophobia or the fear of deep waters, you might want to skip this one. Actually, there's quite a few you might want to skip. Now, a lot of cultures have some form of giant octopuses. Octopi in their folklore, from Greek to Caribbean to Japanese, but the most famous version is the Kraken, which actually comes from Scandinavia, which is weird. I always thought it was Greek, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Now, unlike most of the entries on this list, this mother sucker is definitely real. There's giant squids that exist in the deep water, and I know squids are not octopuses, but you think mother suckers 300 years ago knew the difference? There's a 30-foot squid on display in the Smithsonian, but the largest one ever recorded was 43 feet long. Just to put that into perspective, that's the distance I have to stay away from my ex-wife. Sea serpents. Sea serpents are creatures that, like giant octopuses, appear in a lot of different folklores around the world. And also like the giant octopus, these bitches are real. There's a deep sea fish called the oarfish that can be up to 50 feet long. For reference, here's a photo of some Navy SEALs with a 23-foot long oarfish. The first documented sighting of an oarfish was in 1860 on a beach in Bermuda. And can you guess what they called this thing back then? That's right, a sea serpent. Well, there you go, bro. What else do you need? Chupacabra. This is Mexico's Bigfoot. Well, actually, no, it's not, because it was originally reported in Puerto Rico, but that doesn't matter. Now, fun fact, Chupacabra means goat sucker in Spanish, which coincidentally was my nickname back in college. Don't ask. Anyways, it was called that because allegedly it sucks the blood of livestock animals like one of those fruity vampires from Twilight. Now, this legend is actually a pretty new one. It was first reported, like I said, in Puerto Rico in 1995, and everybody and their tío claims to have seen one, but nobody has any proof. There's not a lot of good photo evidence. Also, nobody can come to an agreement on what it even looks like. Some people say it looks like a lizard man, but most of the time it's identified as a dog-like creature. In fact, most of the Chupacabra sightings in Mexico are assumed to just be dogs with mange. Actually, they're proven to just be dogs with mange. The Jersey Devil. Legend goes that the Jersey Devil was born to a woman named Jane Leeds, who was pissed that she was having too many kids. So when she was pregnant with her 13th child, she cursed it, and it came out looking like this. It's been haunting the forests of North Jersey ever since. It's described as having wings like a bat, hooves and a head like a goat, as well as an insatiable appetite for gabagool. Okay, I made that last part up. But now, there's been a lot of sightings of this beast dating all the way back to the late 1700s, including by, and I shit you not, Napoleon's brother. Yes, that Napoleon, the short king himself. Now, while every paisan in Jersey has claimed to lay eyes on this creature, there's not really a lot of good video footage that I could find. The jackalope. It's a jackrabbit with antelope horns. That's pretty much it. Funny thing about this, when I was a kid, I was convinced that jackalopes were real, and I dedicated my life to trying to find one. But then my dad came up to me one day and said, "Danny, You're 18. It's time to get your shit together and get a job. Thunderbird. Native American tribes had tails of birds so massive that simply flapping their wings would create thunder. Since those days, there's been a lot of sightings of giant birds, including one incident in which cowboys in Tombstone, Arizona allegedly shot a bird with a 30-foot wingspan. But here's a modern look at the Thunderbird.
1977, many reports of giant living thunderbirds were pouring into newspaper offices and TV stations across central Illinois. You are now seeing the original footage of living flying thunderbirds straight out of Native American legends.
Now, I know it's hard to tell from this video, but apparently those things are like 4 times bigger than a turkey vulture, which is already pretty huge. The Loch Ness Monster. This is probably the second most famous cryptid. It's believed to be a dinosaur or something, specifically a plesiosaur. Now, if you're familiar with Nessie, then you've probably seen this photo. Well, the photo's pretty much proven to be a hoax. There's an uncropped version of the image where you can see it's very tiny. Also, the guy who took the photo's son admitted that they faked it, so there's that. Yeti. The Yeti is like Bigfoot's Asian cousin. The Yeti, or abominable snowman, is native to the Himalayas and is thought to be related to Gigantopithecus, a giant primate native to Asia. People think that these apes also crossed over the Bering Land Bridge into America, and that's where Sasquatches come from. The Dover Demon. Described as a creature with large glowing eyes, a watermelon-shaped head, and tendril-like fingers. It's basically like Roger from American Dad. Anyways, this guy was spotted in the 70s around Dover, Massachusetts by 3 teenagers. That's it, bro? I need more than the word of 3 teenagers to convince me. What is this horse shit? Mothman. Now, you may have heard of Mothman from the 2002 film The Mothman Prophecies. Actually, you probably didn't because it bombed at the box office and the movie sucked. Anyways, Mothman is a terrifying creature who's said to inhabit Point Place, West Virginia. Wait, Point Place? No, that's not right. That's the city from That 70s Show. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. First sighted in 1966, he's described as being a humanoid figure with glowing red eyes and massive wings. In 1967, a bridge collapsed in Point Pleasant, close to where the creature had been seen, and some people linked the collapse to sightings of Mothman. These days, Point Pleasant is a tourist destination for Mothman enthusiasts. They even have a statue of the guy in the town square. They even have a festival dedicated just to him that happens once a year. Despite that, it looks like Mothman recently made the move to Chicago, where he was seen over 55 times from 2011 to 2017. Actually, it looks like he switches back and forth from Point Pleasant to Chicago because there was a news report that came out in 2016 in Point Pleasant.
Mothman is back. These pictures, supposedly taken by a man who says he was driving along State Highway 2 in Point Pleasant, saw something jump from tree to tree, so he pulled off the road to take these pictures. The man declined an on-camera interview, but is adamant the pictures are real.
Now remember like 50 seconds ago when I said there was a couple of Mothman sightings before the bridge collapse in Point Pleasant? Well, apparently Mothman has been seen before multiple disasters, including Chernobyl and even 9/11.
9/11 was a national tragedy.
So I guess you can say, Mothman did 9/11. You're off the hook, George Bush. Greys, or gray aliens, are the stereotypical alien. Like Roger from American Dad. They have big-ass heads, gray skin, and black oval-shaped eyes. The most famous alleged encounter with gray aliens is the incident in Roswell, New Mexico. I should probably elaborate on that one for people who don't know. The Roswell incident is referring to an event in 1947 in which an unknown aircraft crashed near a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. The Army issued a press release stating that they recovered a flying disc from the crash, but they quickly retracted that statement and instead said it was a weather balloon. Then in the 1970s, a retired lieutenant colonel stated that the weather balloon story was a cover-up. Fleetwood's Monster. Here's another one that's in West Virginia, man. What is it with West Virginia and monsters? Anyways, the Flatwoods Monster is a kind of hard to describe, but it looks like this. It was allegedly discovered in 1952 by 2 brothers who saw a bright object crash on a farm. They told some other locals and then a group got together to investigate the site of the crash. They saw a pulsing red light along with a monster. So basically it's an alien. They also reported smelling a pungent mist coming from it. So it's an alien that likes Taco Bell. Kind of like Roger from American Bat Squatch. This one sounds like a joke, but I assure you it is not. Also, I don't understand why this one's only in the first layer. Like, nobody knows about Bat Squatch, bro. Bat Squatch is a 9-foot tall bat-like humanoid. Kind of looks like Man-Bat from DC Comics. You can find some photos that claim to be of the creature, but of course they're dog shit. Every time there's a photo of one of these cryptids, it's always grainy as shit, bro. Let me get a 4K image of Bat Squatch, man. The Mongolian Deathworm. The best way to describe this creature is
big, scary, and pink!
The Mongolian Deathworm is rumored to be a large, schlong-like creature between 2 and 5 feet long, which is native to the Gobi Desert. However, it's been basically proven that it's just a sand boa, the Enfield monster. Enfield, Illinois, 1973. Henry McDaniel hears a scratching noise at his door. Thinking it's just a raccoon, he grabs a shotgun and opens the door. But this is no raccoon. McDaniel described what he saw as a 5-foot-tall, 3-legged gray monster with reflecting eyes. 2 weeks later, Henry claims to have seen the monster again near the railroad tracks. The same day, a search party went out to scope out the area, and they claimed to have seen an ape-like creature near McDonald's house. By this time, the entire town of Enfield went into a panic. Mother suckers started coming in from other states to hunt the creature. It got so bad that the chief of police called up McDaniel and told him to stop making these claims or else he would arrest him, which made the people who believe in cryptids very suspicious because they were like, oh, he's trying to silence him. But I think he was just trying to keep the peace. Like, he was getting sick of all these mother suckers coming from out of town causing a ruckus. But who knows, man? Who knows? Globster. A globster is basically an unidentified mass that washes up on the shore. Notable globsters include the Chilean blob and the St. Augustine monster. But these two examples are what I like to call blob globsters. They turned out to be just decomposed whale carcasses, and there's some others that are not so blobby, like the Panama creature, who looks kind of like your mom after a few glasses of Chardonnay. This one was confirmed to be a sloth, but the most mysterious of all is the Montauk monster, a creature which still hasn't been identified. Loveland Frog, or the Loveland Frogman, is a Cincinnati legend which can be best described as a big frog. This giant frog creature was sighted many times in and around Ohio. It's said to be about 3 to 4 feet tall and has the ability to walk on its hind legs. The most famous sighting of this cryptid was in 1972 by a police officer named Ray Shockey. There's even a video that claims to show the frogman.
You just got frogged.
No, but seriously, the frogman was just confirmed to be an iguana without its tail by the guy who originally saw it in the first place. Ogopogo. Nessie's less famous Canadian cousin, Ogopogo has roots in native folklore and it's said to inhabit Lake Okanagan. That's not right. Okanagan Lake. Whatever, in British Columbia. Now, I've never heard of Ogopogo, but there's a lot of sightings of this mother sucker.
What is it?
Jim LaRock says he couldn't believe his eyes.
Can't be a wave.
Mysterious ripples breaking through Skaha Lake's glassy surface near Caledon on June 1st.
And all I heard was like a swooshing sound, like swoosh, swoosh.
Again, same thing as with Loch Ness Monster. It's a lake, man. People have probably explored every square inch of this lake. If you told me this was in the ocean, I'd say, okay, maybe there's a possibility. But come on, it's a fucking lake, bro. Give me a break. Okay, now don't laugh at this next one. The Pope Lick Monster. Named after Pope Lick Creek in Kentucky, this monster is said to be a human-goat hybrid who lives beneath the railroad tracks. It's also said that he can use hypnosis or voice mimicry to trick people into climbing up on the railroad tracks, only to be met with a passing train hitting them. Now, whether or not this hairy beast exists or not is irrelevant, because he actually has killed multiple people. Several people have climbed to the top of the railroad trestle looking for the Pope Lick Monster, only to either get hit by an oncoming train or fall off the tracks. Reptilians. Ooh, baby, we're getting into some real Alex Jones conspiracy shit here now. I can make an entire video on this topic alone, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Reptilians, also known as lizard men, or as the name suggests, lizard men. Many cultures have some sort of lizard people in their mythology, specifically Sumerian cultures. Now, there have been a lot of reptilians sighted throughout the world as well. The Loveland Frog, who I mentioned earlier, is a possible example of one of these creatures. Now, here's where it gets a little bit nutty. There's a substantial amount of people who believe that a race of shape-shifting reptilian aliens has infiltrated world governments and corporations and are slowly building up power for a full-scale invasion. This theory was popularized by former soccer player and current conspiracy conspiracy theorist David Icke, and the theory goes like this. In ancient times, a race of reptilians came to Earth from another dimension. The Babylonians worshipped them as gods and called them the Anunnaki. After a while, these lizard people started breeding with humans, creating a shape-shifting hybrid race known as the Babylonian Brotherhood, aka the Illuminati. You've probably heard of them before because every rapper in the early 2010s was accused of being a part of them. Many prominent people today are thought to be reptilians in disguise, including George Bush, Barack Obama, Queen Elizabeth, Hillary Clinton, and even Justin Bieber. Okay, that last one might be true. Have you seen that one video?
Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the following.
Wendigo. The Wendigo originates in Native American folklore. It's typically depicted as a giant humanoid elk-like creature. Some people think that many Bigfoot sightings are actually Wendigos since they live in the same general area. The Wendigo has the power to possess other people and even turn them into other Wendigos, so there's a little bit of a zombie vampire thing going on there too. When someone is under its influence, they're said to be overcome with insatiable greed or hunger to the point of cannibalism. Now, the real creepy thing about Wendigos is that there's an actual psychological disorder called Wendigo psychosis, in which a person has an uncontrollable urge to eat other people. But don't worry, the only known cases are among the Algonquin Cree people of Canada, and it hasn't happened in a while. But that's still scary as shit. One minute you're out fishing with your buddy, the next he's trying to take a bite out of your thigh. Like, how will the friendship ever go back to normal after that? Yowie.
Standing between around 2 and 4 meters tall, with long arms and legs and a human-like face, the existence of the Yowie has baffled Aussies for centuries.
The Yowie is like an Australian version of Bigfoot. It shares a lot of similarities with Bigfoot, and the big difference being apparently in its personality. Like, it's much more aggressive and it eats kangaroos and stuff, whereas Bigfoot is thought to be a vegetarian. Tales of this creature go back to the Australian Aboriginals, and there's been hundreds of sightings of the beast. In fact, there were 6 Yowie sightings in 2020 alone. This mother sucker simply did not get the memo about social distancing. There was even a sighting earlier this year. Dragons? You like dragons? I shouldn't have to explain dragons. The only reason I didn't skip this entry was to point out that there actually have been a ton of alleged dragon sightings. Here's the clearest one that I could find. How do you explain that one, huh? Omibozu is a Japanese sea spirit whose favorite hobby is sinking ships. They're frequently depicted as bald and black, and they can vary in size from 1 meter to tens of meters. They typically appear to sailors at night when the waters are calm, but once they appear, the waters quickly become, not calm. These creatures have appeared in Japanese folklore for hundreds of years, with the last notable sighting being in 1971. You know what? I think I'm going to cancel that cruise I was going to go on next month. Skinwalker. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker is said to be a witch who can take the form of an animal. They typically take the form of a coyote, but they can turn into any animal they want, even a narwhal. The Fresno Nightcrawler. The Fresno Nightcrawler is a cryptid who's a local of Southern California. Now, at first glance, it kind of looks like a pair of pants, doesn't it? Unlike most cryptids, this one has actually been caught on tape multiple times. Not even the Nightcrawler can escape the paparazzi. It was captured one time in Fresno, and again in Yosemite. Somebody even claimed to see one of these creatures in Poland, Baba Yaga. In Slavic folklore, Baba Yaga is a witch who lives in the forest and sometimes eats children. She's essentially the Russian version of the boogeyman. Slavic parents use her to scare children into obedience. If you don't make your bed, Baba Yaga gonna eat you. Now, she's not always evil. There's a lot of variations of her where she actually helps people, or she's just neutral. Dwarves. Again, do I really need to explain dwarves? Just in case, here's a picture of a dwarf. Now, believe it or not, there's actually been quite a few notable dwarf sightings. One in 1954 in Venezuela, where 2 men encountered 4 hairy dwarf-like creatures on a hunting trip. Now, these were no fantasy Lord of the Rings and my axe looking dwarves. Apparently, they stepped out of a hovering craft and were completely covered in hair. Kind of like Gossamer from Looney Tunes. Anyways, there was another dwarf sighting reported in Fiji where 2 students claimed to see 8 short hairy creatures that ran into the brush when approached. Giants. Almost every society in the world has some stories about giants, most notably in the Old Testament of the Bible. The book of Genesis mentions beings known as the Nephilim, which are described as being created when the sons of God came unto the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. They were mentioned again in the book of Numbers, and there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak who came from the Nephilim. We were in our sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Translated into modern language, they're basically saying they were huge. It's also speculated that Goliath, the giant who David defeated, is a son of Anak, aka a Nephilim. Now, there's also been some cases of ancient giants being unearthed. The most well-known example is the giant of Castelnau. The giant's bones were exhumed in France in the late 1800s, and based on the size of his tibia, it's said that this man was around 11 feet tall. Yo, get this man to play center for the Knicks. Maybe they'll actually win a playoff series for once. Gnomes. A gnome is a short, bearded mother sucker that always wears a hat. Here's some video footage of a gnome.
Let's scare into the news!
Turkish SpongeBob. Turkish SpongeBob, also known as Osman Reza Kamel Sponge Turku, possibly the most terrifying of all these creatures. Turkish SpongeBob is thought to reside in Istanbul, Turkey. He's been seen hitting fat rips of a hookah and drinking chai. If you ever see Turkish SpongeBob, do not approach him. He is dangerous. Alright, well that concludes the first layer. Let's move on to the second one. Let's take a little break from talking about ghouls and goblins to talk about something much less scary. The beautiful sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard of Skillshare, but I'm going to tell you about them anyways. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of ad-free classes. There's so many classes, man, far too many to count. They have classes on animation, video editing, creative writing, even fine art if you're into that kind of stuff. And the cool thing is, they're constantly adding new and exciting classes. Right now I'm trying to make my audio sound more crisp, so I've been checking out this class on voiceover cleanup by David Miller. And if I would have known about Skillshare earlier, my life would be so much better right now. I'd probably still be married. So don't make the same mistakes I made. Sign up for Skillshare today with the link in my description and get 1 month free. And I know what you're thinking, free? There's absolutely no way. Well, there is. Sign up today and find out for yourself. Go ahead, start exploring your creativity today. But yeah, man, shout out to Skillshare. Let's continue. Golem. I'll have this clip from The Sopranos explain to you what a golem is.
I created a living golem.
What the fuck is a golem?
Some monster, Frankenstein!
Basically, in Jewish folklore, a golem is a creature created out of clay and brought to life with what I can only describe as Jew magic. Is that offensive? Probably. I apologize. Keep in mind that this is not a creature from the Hebrew Bible, but rather an Ashkenazi legend. The most famous golem is the Golem of Prague, which was created to defend a Jewish village from anti-Semitic attacks in the 1700s. The golem was then stored in the attic of a synagogue where it's said to remain to this day. Some people even say that the golem was brought back to life briefly during World War II where it killed a Nazi. Griffin. If you've ever played an RPG game, you probably know what a griffin is. In case you don't know, it's a mix between an eagle and a lion. The griffin makes appearances in many cultures around the world, most notably Brentford, England, where 2 people claim to have seen the mythical creature. That's right, in 1984, a guy named Kevin Chippendale... Wait, Chippendale? Alright, man, this has to be a fake story. There's no fucking way this dude's name is Chippendale. Alright, I tried looking it up, but all I could find was pictures of sexy shirtless dudes, so I gave up after like 4 hours. Anyways, let's assume he's a real person. Mr. Chippendale allegedly saw the creature flying near the roof of his apartment building. He described it as resembling a dog with wings, having a long muzzle, 4 legs, and what looked like paws. He also claims to have seen it again the same year. But if you think that guy's just a crazy guy, there was also a psychologist named John Olson who claims to have seen it while jogging near the River Thames. Krampus.
Krampus, the demon of Christmas. Santa would give gifts to the good kids, and Krampus would punish the naughty ones. If you were really bad, he'd throw you in his almost child-sized sack and shake you good.
That pretty much sums it up, to be honest. Leprechaun. You probably know about leprechauns from this little schmuck.
Stars and horseshoes, plovers and blue moons, hourglasses, rainbows, and tasty red balloons!
Ugh, I hate him so much. Oh, they're after me Lucky Charms! They're after me Lucky Charms! Shut the fuck up! You're so annoying! Anyways, as you may already know, leprechauns are Irish midgets who hoard gold and have magical powers. Now, you may be thinking to yourselves, come on man, leprechauns are just a dumb myth. Well, you're wrong, because a guy named PJ O'Hare claims to have found leprechaun bones, and he keeps the remains in his bar to this day. Bro, if that's not proof, I don't know what is. And we can't forget about this viral video from back in the day.
To me, it look like a leprechaun to me. All you gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else seen the leprechaun say yeah?
This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like.
This is a special leprechaun flute, which has been passed down from thousands of years ago from my great-great-grandfather who was Irish.
Trolls. Trolls originate from Scandinavian folklore. There's surprisingly a lot of troll sightings even to this day. Here's the most famous one. I'm kidding. Here's the real video.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
Double, baby. Double. Unicorn. The legendary unicorn is another one of those animals that exists in a lot of different cultures. There have been a few sightings of unicorns from time to time, including this one, which is probably fake. Listen, man, if it's not blurry as shit and doesn't look like it was filmed on the same camera that took a photo of Lincoln, I don't believe it. Unicorns, unlike most entries on this list, were probably real at some point. I honestly wouldn't completely discount their existence. Like, I don't know if they literally are a horse with a horn, but it's not that much of a stretch to say some one-horned creature existed and it was hunted to extinction or something. In fact, the remains of a one-horned creature were found in Siberia recently. It looked more like a fuzzy rhino than a unicorn, but come on, bro, it's something. Oh, and then there's this thing, the Saola, aka the Asian unicorn, which was first photographed in 1999. And before that, one hadn't been seen in over 50 years, so it was basically a myth. So it isn't that far-fetched to say there's some elusive creature that looks kind of like a unicorn living out in the middle of nowhere. But you know, stay tuned, you might actually see a real unicorn later on in this video. Vampire. These days, when you think of vampires, you probably think of something like this. But back in the day, vampires were terrifying monsters that would keep you up at night. It's thought that the concept of vampires came from the Romanian strigoi, which shared a lot of the same features, including drinking blood, transforming into bats, and invisibility. You know, all that good stuff. The popularity of vampires increased when Bram Stoker dropped his debut novel, Dracula. I'm sure you've heard of it. Now, vampire sightings have been reported for hundreds of years in Southeast Europe, but there's even been some sightings in America. In fact, in New England, there was a whole vampire panic where people thought people were coming back from the dead and drinking blood, so they started burning bodies to stop them. There's even people today who claim to be vampires.
I am a vampire. I do consume human blood. There is a real live community that exists not only within the States, but also throughout the world.
Man, you thought furries were weird. Jinn. In Islam, it's said that jinn inhabit the unseen world, basically another dimension. Similar to humans, they have free will, so they can be good or bad. They're also able to interact with people on occasion. The most famous jinn is this guy.
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
Genie is just another word for jinn. Now, there's been a lot of jinn sightings, and essentially any ghost sighting can actually be attributed to a jinn. Like, they can inhabit a house in the same way that a ghost haunts a house. Roc. A roc is a massive bird so large that it can pick up an entire elephant with its talons. The roc was popularized in Arabic folklore, specifically in 1001 Nights. Aside from that, Marco Polo, yes, the Marco Polo, claims to have seen the creature himself. Aswang. An aswang is like a Filipino version of a vampire with a little bit of werewolf thrown in for good measure. During the day, they're just a regular Joe Schmoes. They could be working at Jollibee's or something. But at night, they transform into terrifying beasts. Now, they can take many different forms, from a wolf-like creature to a ghoul to a bat-type thing as seen in this photo. Even though there's multiple types of aswangs, one thing is for sure, I will definitely never be visiting the Philippines. I don't care how good the mail-order brides are. Bunyip. When you hear the name Bunyip, you're probably like, oh, that sounds cute. Well, you're wrong! It's a terrifying creature that lives in the bogs of Australia. People who claim to have seen it give different descriptions. Some say it's scaly, some say it's furry, others say it's huge. But all I know is this mother sucker will eat anything in a 50-foot radius. So if you plan on going on a trip to an Australian bog, cancel that shit immediately. Mermaid. Mermaids are sea-dwelling creatures whose top half is human and bottom half is fish. Not to be confused with the far less sexy maid mer. Tales of mermaids have existed since man first took to the seas. You can find stories about mermaids going back 3,000 years. Since then, there have been many sightings of mermaids, including, and I shit you not, by Christopher Columbus. Seriously, Columbus claims to have seen 3 mermaids on his way back to Europe and stated they are not as beautiful as they are said to be, for their faces had some masculine traits. Say what you will about Columbus, but man ain't no simp. Now, the generally accepted explanation for mermaid sightings is that they're just manatees, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. You're at sea for months, surrounded by a bunch of other dudes. After a while, everything's gonna start looking like a woman. There are multiple documentaries pondering the existence of mermaids. There's a History Channel one, there's one on Animal Planet, there's even a 3-hour-long 2-part documentary on Amazon investigating an apparent mermaid body, Ahul. The best way to describe the Ahul is a gorilla with bat wings. If that doesn't make you want to shit your pants, then you are braver than me. It's said that a Dr. Ernest Bartels witnessed a giant bat creature while exploring the jungles of Indonesia in 1925. But take this with a grain of salt, because I can't find anything about this guy anywhere other than cryptozoology sites. So you'd think there would be a newspaper article or something about him, but no. I don't even know if this guy's real. Air rod. Not to be confused with a hot rod. An air rod is one of the few entries on this iceberg that is unquestionably real.
Rods are described as 1 to 6 feet long with a cylindrical body and either multiple sets of wings or with a thin membrane of wings wrapped around their entire length, propelling the creature forward so fast they are undetectable to the naked eye.
While air rods have never been seen with the naked eye, they have shown up on quite a few pictures and videos. Now, there are many different theories as to what they could be, from experimental government devices to alien probes to interdimensional beings, but they're probably just bugs. Basically, when a bug or a bird or anything that moves really fast goes in front of a camera, it can look like a rod. So yeah, it's really not that crazy. Phantom cat. Despite its name, the Gippsland phantom cat is not actually a phantom. It's referring to a large puma-looking animal that has been seen around Gippsland, Australia. Now, unlike most cryptids, there is an actual clear photo of this thing. Like, this is one of the only entries on this list that isn't grainy or blurry as shit. Like, this is clearly a giant cat walking around in the park. The local government in the area claims that the existence of big cats in the region is highly unlikely, but there's a fucking photo right there. That's clearly not a house cat. Bear Lake Monster. Bear Lake is a large lake on the border of Utah and Idaho that's possibly home to a giant swimming cryptid known as the Bear Lake Monster. The legend of the Bear Lake Monster became popular when the Mormon settler named Joseph Rich wrote an article in 1868 about other settlers who had seen monsters swimming in the water. 26 years later, Mr. Rich admitted he made the whole thing up, but that didn't stop other people from seeing it. In fact, the last reported sighting of the creature was in 2002. The Beast of Bray Road, or the Wisconsin werewolf as it's also known, is a humanoid wolf-like creature that's been spotted near Elkhorn, Wisconsin. There were multiple sightings of a large wolf-like creature walking on its hind legs in the 80s and 90s, and these sightings were so prevalent that they even made a whole documentary about it. There was even a shitty horror movie made about it.
The Beast of Bray Road. Legend has it that back in the 1800s, there were all these settlers that lived deep within the woods. And one day they were all brutally massacred. Some say it was a monster, a Bigfoot, a werewolf.
Bessie. We've all heard of Nessie, but what about Bessie? Bessie is a Loch Ness Monster-type creature who inhabits Lake Erie in the Midwestern United States. There's been a tremendous amount of sightings of Bessie going all the way back to 1793, when the captain of a sailboat spotted it and presumably shit his pants. He stated that the creature was over 6 meters long. Then it was spotted again in 1817 by a ship crew who claims they saw a 30 to 40 foot long serpent in the water. That's weird. I don't remember peeing near Lake Erie in 1817. Anyways, there was 3 sightings that year, and the eyewitness reports didn't stop. Like, even today, there's a $5,000 reward for bringing Bessie in dead or alive. Man, doesn't that seem kind of low? Like, you just took down a giant, legendary 40-foot sea monster for $5K? What the fuck? That guy's probably gonna sell it to a museum for $100K. Hey, listen. If you plan on hunting down Bessie, do not sell it to this schmuck, alright? Go straight to the museum. The bloop. The bloop actually refers to an ultra-low frequency sound that was captured underwater back in 1997. Scientists speculated that the sound could be made by a marine animal that was larger than a blue whale. This hypothetical creature was also named bloop after the sound. Now, since then, a new explanation has been put forward that the sound was actually a glacier collapsing or possibly an ice quake. But you can't trust scientists, man. Those schmucks don't know shit. I'll play the sound for you and you be the judge. Champ, or Champy, is the name of a lake monster living in Lake Champlain. Another lake monster? Bro, seriously? Does every lake in the world have a fucking monster in it? The first confirmed sighting of Champ was in 1819 by a guy named Captain Crumb. Hilarious name aside, Captain Crumb stated that the monster must have been around 187 feet long and had eyes the color of peeled onions. Champ, unlike its contemporary Bessie, actually has a good amount of photos taken of him, or her. From the photos you can see that it looks similar to the Loch Ness Monster, so it's been speculated that Champ could also be a plesiosaur of some kind. Devil monkeys. Devil monkeys are a bizarre race of primates that have been spotted all over the US. From Tennessee to Kentucky to Illinois, they've been commonly described as being baboon-like with sharp claws. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I couldn't find much about these ones except for on Cryptid Wiki, so take this answer with 2 heaping tablespoons of salt. Deloy's ape, named after Louis-François Fernand Hector Deloy, a Swiss geologist who shot and killed the creature in Venezuela while he was out surveying for oil. Deloy and others believe that at the time they found the missing ancestor of modern apes and humans. There was a lot of skepticism surrounding the photo in the scientific community, but it's now widely believed to be a spider monkey. But there's still true believers out there who know the truth. This wasn't no spider monkey, and whoever says that is part of a government cover-up. Dodo. Most of us are familiar with the dodo bird. It was a goofy, flightless bird that was native to the island of Mauritius. Is that how you pronounce that? I don't know, whatever. After humans arrived on the island, the dodo would be hunted to extinction within 100 years. Now you may be asking, if it's well documented that this thing existed and it's now extinct, why is it on the iceberg? Well, some people are still claiming to see them, and it's also possible that the dodo could be living on the uninhabited islands surrounding Mauritius. The Fiji mermaid. So we covered mermaids a little earlier in this iceberg, but this is a specific mermaid known as the Fiji mermaid. P.T. Barnum, the famous circus guy, had the mummified remains of this creature on display in one of his museums. As you can see from these images, it's not like those sexy mermaids from the cartoons with the double D's and the perfect hair. No, this one looks like a monkey sewed to a fish, which is probably exactly what it is. P.T. Barnum claims to have caught it off the waters of the South Pacific, but come on, bro. It's just a monkey sewed to a fish covered in paper mache. Ghosts. I have no idea why this is in the second layer. Ghosts are first layer stuff, man. Everybody knows what a ghost is. People are obsessed with ghosts. There's more ghost shows than there are H3 Rise and Fall videos on YouTube. A lot. Stories of ghosts go all the way back to ancient Assyria and even Japan. It's one of those tales that's universal and exists in almost every culture, no matter how disconnected that culture was from the rest. Ghosts are commonly believed to be the disembodied souls of people who passed away, or spirits who have unfinished business on Earth and can't go to the afterlife until they finish it. According to a Pew Research poll, 18% of people claim to have seen a ghost at some point in their lives. There's also a lot of photos and videos of ghosts. Here's one particularly scary clip of a ghost. Now I warn you, if you're easily scared, skip forward like 10 seconds. Genuinely terrifying. Giant anaconda. So anacondas are already pretty big. They can be up to 28 feet long, but as far as something bigger than that, the only thing I could find was this clearly photoshopped image from an Indian Facebook account that claims to have killed a 134-foot snake. Injured Cold. Okay, this one's kind of heavy. Injured Cold is another being that, similar to Mothman, was seen around Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Bro, seriously, what is it with West Virginia? Like, remind me to never go there. Anyways, Injured Cold is known as the Smiling Man because he was described as having a permanent smile along with the ability to communicate telepathically. Here's a sketch of what he supposedly looked like. This guy was kind of overshadowed by Mothman since both of them were around the same place at the same time, and Mothman was covered much more by the media. The most notable account of Cold was by a man named Woodrow Derenberger, who gave an entire 30-minute interview about his experience with him. Here's a little snippet.
What I saw last night, I know that I saw it. It was no figment of imagination. It was there, and I was there. And
now, you said that he also made the statement that we will see you again.
When he was getting ready to leave, he stepped back from the truck about one step, and he said, Mr. Dernberger, we will see you again. He didn't say I, he said we.
Alright, let me give you a breakdown of the entire discussion. Woodrow claims that he witnessed an aircraft that was hovering about 12 inches off the road, and it suddenly pulled up in front of him, and a door opened to the craft, and then a being exited the ship. The vehicle then flew up 50 feet in the air, and the being walked up right next to Derenberger's truck window and told him to roll it down. Derenberger described the being as looking like an ordinary man, 6 feet tall, about 35 years old, and wearing a glossy metallic dark blue coat. My man's fashion was truly out of this world. The man spoke to Woodrow telepathically. His mouth did not move. Instead, he had a fixed smile on his face, and the man told him, "Roll down your window. I want to talk to you." During their discussion, the man called himself Indrid Cold. He told Woodrow that he meant him no harm. Derenberger went on to say, "I was very frightened, and as far as I can understand, this was all mental. There were no spoken words from him. I know what he was asking me, but yet he stood there and his mouth did not move. He had a smile on his face and he appeared very courteous and friendly." Dang man, tell that to the guy who drew these sketches. This motherfucker does not look courteous or friendly. Indrid Cold and Mr. Derenberger's conversation lasted about 10 minutes. Before returning to his flying craft, he said, "We will see you again." There were other sightings with various descriptions, but this was by far the most in-depth one. Kappa. A kappa is a turtle-like humanoid from Japanese folklore, and I just gotta read you guys the description of these things because it's hilarious. Kappa are usually seen as troublemakers. Their pranks range from the relatively innocent, such as loudly passing gas, to the malevolent, such as drowning people or kidnapping children. Man, and you thought YouTube pranksters were bad? Imagine your child gets drowned by one of these mother suckers and he's just like, "It's just a prank, bro." You know, come to think of it, a humanoid turtle who commits terrible crimes kind of reminds me of someone. Oh shit! When kappas attack people, they often pull the person's intestines out through their anus. They do this in order to get to a mythical organ called the Shirokodama, which is said to contain the human soul. What? They're also said to love cucumbers, and people can sometimes escape from an aggressive kappa by throwing a cucumber in its direction and then run off while it eats the cucumber. Man, get the fuck out of here, bro. You can't make it cute all of a sudden. Alright, it was just pulling people's intestines out through their assholes, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, it's so cute, just throw a cucumber in the water." Shut up, man. If somebody defeats a kappa, it may surrender, after which it will help with farming or share medical knowledge? What? It's also possible to befriend the kappa by bringing it cucumbers, which will also cause it to help in these ways. Kappas also frequently challenge humans to sumo wrestling, which they're almost guaranteed to win at unless the human gets them to spill the water in their head, after which the kappa will be forced to retreat. This has got to be the most insane thing on this list. Anyways, last thing I wanted to show you guys about these green mother suckers is this old Japanese painting. Like, what in the chicken fried fuck is going on here? It looks like this guy's projectile defecating into Franklin's mouth, which is like, that's fine, but I feel like I'm missing out on a big piece of the lore here. Like, is this one of the techniques of defeating a kappa? I don't know, man. Let's just move on. Kasai Rex. Somewhere deep in the jungles of the Congo, there exists a leftover dinosaur known as Kasai Rex. Now, you're probably thinking, that's highly unlikely. Yes. In 1932, a Swedish hunter named John Johansson went to hunt an elephant. As he made his way across the savannah, he noticed a large creature jump out of the brush. He shot at it and began to back away, and it eventually left. In a panic, Johansson and his servant rushed back to their camp when he came across the beast again, feasting on the butt cheek of a rhinoceros. Now, by this point, John's servant ran away with the shotgun, but luckily, he had his camera on him, so he snapped a photo of what he saw. This photo. Well, there you go. That's proof that it's real. Incorrect! This photo is proven to be from the 1969 Western film Valley of Gwangi. They just superimposed the rhinoceros on top of it. Fuck, man. I'm sick of getting fooled by these hoaxes. I was really holding out hope that there might be a T-Rex out there somewhere. The Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp. The first report of this reptilian cryptid can be traced back to 1988, when a man reported his car damaged overnight by tooth marks and scratches. Reports of this nature continued until a young man named Chris Davis reported that his car was damaged by a creature who he described as green, wet-like, about 7 feet tall, with 3 fingers and red eyes. Oh, and skin like a lizard. He claims he was driving home one night and he got a flat tire and the creature jumped on top of his car. After his report, there was immediate frenzy, which of course led to more sightings of the lizard. Mammoth. The woolly mammoth was a relative of the modern-day elephant, except much hairier. It's commonly believed that they went extinct about 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. However, some people believe that they still exist to this day in Siberia. Now, Siberia is a massive massive and largely unexplored area, so this isn't entirely impossible from my opinion. There's even some photo evidence. I mean, it looks like a mammoth. It could just be a bear with a fish in its mouth. Heck, it could even be my ex-wife for all I know. But again, I'm not gonna say it's completely off the table. Mantis Man. This praying mantis-looking humanoid was spotted by multiple people who were out fishing near the Mekong River in China. I mean, not China, New Jersey. I even saw this forum on HackettstownLife.com. Hackettstown being the location of the sightings where someone alleged that their friend witnessed Mantis Man. There are quite a few comments on this post, with many of them claiming to have also seen the creature. Now, it's speculated that the Mantis Man could potentially be an experiment gone wrong, or even an alien. Here's an alternative depiction of Mantis Man as an alien. Looks pretty creepy. Megalodon. The megalodon actually existed once upon a time. It's a creature which went extinct millions of years ago, and it's thought to have resembled a great white shark, except it's about 5 times bigger. They're said to have been so big that they could swallow an elephant whole. Evidence of these animals comes from teeth that were uncovered which are 7 inches long. Now, the megalodon is thought to be extinct, but again, the ocean's a big place, alright? It goes really deep and it's largely unexplored. So who knows, man? There could be one of these big fellas roaming around down there. Moklele Bembe. I butchered that for sure, but you know what? I tried. I'm gonna call it Eminem for short. Eminem is a creature that's similar to the Loch Ness Monster, but it lives in the rivers of the Congo. The first description of Eminem was from a man named Carl Hagenbach, a famous wild animal merchant who pioneered the modern zoo. He claimed to have heard from 2 separate sources about a creature that the natives described as half elephant, half dragon. That kind of sounds like my ex-wife. Sightings continued throughout the early 1900s. Even today, people still claim to see Eminem.
That's an awfully hot coffee pot.
The Montauk Monster. I briefly touched on this one earlier when I was talking about globsters, but the Montauk Monster is a mysterious carcass that washed up off the coast of Long Island. There's a pretty clear picture of it, and as you can see, it looks like some kind of hairless raccoon or something. There's so much interest in this thing that there was an episode of Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura centered around it. They even talked about it on Ancient Aliens. They even had a segment about it on National Geographic.
It had like a beak. It looked like a bird's beak or like a pterodactyl's beak, you know, like some kind of like reptile bird type thing.
A lot of people think that the Montauk Monster is an escaped experiment from a government animal testing facility. Personally, I have no clue, but that mother sucker does not look like no raccoon. As far as I know, raccoons don't have a beak, but hey, I'm no expert on rodents. Naga. If you've played World of Warcraft, you probably know what a Naga is, but if you have a life, let me explain. In Hinduism and Buddhism, Nagas are a race of mermaid-like beings who are top half human, bottom half serpent, and they're known to inhabit bodies of water. Sightings of Naga aren't uncommon, and most of them occur in the Mekong River in Thailand. Ningen. The Ningen is a newer cryptid discovery which is being seen off the coast of Antarctica on a few occasions. These creatures were observed by crews of Japanese whale research ships, and I put that in quotes because they're just whale hunters. Crews of these ships have seen whale-like creatures with humanoid features in the water. They're described as being completely white in color with an estimated length of 20 to 30 meters. Eyewitnesses describe them as having a human-like shape, often with legs, arms, and even 5-fingered hands. Other accounts describe them as having fins or a large mermaid-like tail instead of legs. Owlman. You've heard of Mothman, but have you heard of Owlman? Owlman is basically Mothman's English counterpart, and they share a lot of similarities. In 1976, a paranormal researcher by the name of Tony Doc Shields claims that he investigated a report of 2 young girls who saw a large winged creature hovering above the church tower in Monmouth, England. Since the original story, there's been a lot of claims of Owlman sightings over the years. Now, the guy who first broke this story, Tony Shields, is not exactly the most reputable bloke, so I would take this one with a massive pinch of sodium chloride. Well, that does it for the second layer. Let's move on to layer 3. The Pacific Northwest tree octopus. In 1998, a webpage with the headline, "Help Save the Endangered Pacific Northwest Tree Octopus from Extinction" was created. It has some information about the creature as well as photos and maps of where its habitat is. Now, if you got a big brain like me, you probably figured out by now that this is fake, right? This webpage is commonly used in internet literacy classes to gauge kids' abilities to discern fake information online. But let's be honest, if our boomer parents saw this on Facebook, they would click share without a second thought. Scarecrow. Scarecrows are decoys made to look like humans that are used to scare birds away from eating crops. Now, I couldn't really find much information about scarecrow cryptids besides 2 specific entities. One is the kune-kune, which originated in Japan on the internet in 2001. Kune-kune is described as having a slender, white, paper fabric-like humanoid shape. It's said to appear in fields on hot summer days. Here's an alleged sighting of a kune-kune. What? This is 2 pieces of wood nailed together with a XXL shirt over it. Anyways, the Kune Kune allegedly can only become visible from a distance. Witnesses may see field workers or others closer to the Kune Kune who do not seem to be aware of it. No, it's not that they're not aware of it, it's that they don't care that there's a makeshift scarecrow right next to them. Moving on, the other scarecrow-like entity I found is called the Ghostly Scarecrow of Chiang Rai. This one is not a scarecrow at all, but an alien. Sighted in 2005 in a rural farming village in Thailand, the creature was described as small, with red eyes and yellow skin. Oh, and also it can float. 10 residents of this farming town claim to have seen the bizarre creature hovering above a ridge and then running through a rice paddy. One of the witnesses claims that the scarecrow nodded its head at him and stared directly at him with its blood-red eyes with an imploring gaze, almost as if it were asking for help. Skunk ape! The skunk ape, or Florida Bigfoot, is a large ape creature that's said to inhabit the swamps of northern Florida. Reports of the skunk ape were particularly common in the 1960s and 70s. In 1974, sightings of a large, foul-smelling, hairy ape-like creature which ran upright on 2 legs were reported in suburban neighborhoods of Florida. In 2000, an anonymous woman sent in 2 photos to the sheriff's department of what looks to be the skunk ape. She claims to have captured these photos near Miaka State Park. Now, normally I'm skeptical of stuff like this, but this is Florida we're talking about, so this one's probably 100% true. Spring-heeled Jack is a humanoid cryptid in English folklore who was apparently amazing at gymnastics. Jack was popping off in 1800s London, with the first sighting of him being recorded in 1837 by a man who claims the mysterious figure jumped over a high railing and landed right in front of him before running off. The most well-known incidents involving Jack were the attacks of 2 teenage girls, Lucy Scales and Jane Alsop. These attacks were widely reported in British newspapers and helped bring Spring-heeled Jack into popular culture. There were many more sightings of Jack throughout the 19th century, all the way up to 1904, where the last recorded sighting of him happened in Liverpool. Werewolf. You're probably familiar with the legendary werewolf, but if not, a werewolf is a human with the ability to turn into a wolf or a wolf-man hybrid, usually during a full moon. Werewolves became a big part of European folklore in medieval times. In fact, they even had werewolf trials. Now, I'm assuming you've heard of the witch trials, where people were accused of being witches for any fucking reason somebody could think of, like, oh, you wash your ass, you must be a witch. But yeah, they also had werewolf trials for people who were accused of being werewolves. Things were nutty back then, I have to say. Now, I'm not going to get too far into it because there's a few entries later on that could potentially be werewolves. Also, the Beast of Bray Road, we've already established, could potentially be a werewolf. The White River Monster is a large fish inhabiting Arkansas's White River. First reported in 1937 and described as being 4 to 5 feet wide by 12 feet long, with the skin of an elephant and the face of a catfish. There were over 100 confirmed sightings in 1937, but then another one wouldn't occur until the 70s. It's been speculated that the monster could be an elephant seal who entered the White River via the Mississippi. My personal theory, it's an albino catfish. Have you seen how big these motherfuckers get? Mystery solved. Phoenix, the mythical bird from Greek mythology that is reborn from its own ashes after death. The legacy of the phoenix lives on today as a city in Arizona. This one's not really a cryptid, man. It's just like a legendary creature, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it's still cool. The 50-foot Congo snake. No, this is not a nickname for Dikembe Mutombo Schlong. In 1959, a Belgian Air Force colonel was flying in a helicopter when he reported seeing an enormous snake who he described as being 550 feet long and 2 feet wide. He was so shocked at the size of this absolute unit that he made his pilot turn around so he could snap a picture of the snake. Now, as I said before, the largest snake ever recorded is about 28 feet long, and I think it's safe to say that this mother sucker could not tell the difference between 28 feet and 50 feet when he's so high up in the air. So if you ask me, this one's probably definitely real. Like, it probably wasn't 50 feet long exactly, but it could be 30 feet long, and it wouldn't be too unrealistic. Either way, I'm in awe at the size of this lad. Ancient astronauts. Pull out the aluminum foil because we're going to be making some hats. The ancient astronaut theory claims that extraterrestrials have been visiting humans since prehistoric times. You may be familiar with this idea from the show Ancient Aliens, which has 17 seasons and counting, by the way. Now, the entire theory is predicated on the concept that there's no way humans built the pyramids, bro. They're like too big. It must have been aliens. I mean, after all, it is hard to explain how things like Stonehenge and the Easter Island statues were created by such primitive civilizations. Like, how did the Aztecs have such an accurate calendar? And how did the Sumerians know about all the planets of our solar system 5,000 years ago? Essentially, these ancient aliens have influenced every facet of human civilization, from culture to technology to religion. It's also been a common position that deities from most religions are actually just aliens. For example, the Anunnaki and the Nephilim, which I mentioned earlier, are thought to be these ancient extraterrestrials. They back up their claims with the fact that there are a lot of depictions of what look like modern astronauts in ancient art. For example, these cave paintings in Italy depict what look like astronauts. On top of that, there's a lot of artifacts from Mesopotamia that depict things that look like flying saucers and more astronauts. Anyways, this topic's super interesting, and I now see why Ancient Aliens has 17 seasons. Man-eating tree. There are a few examples of carnivorous plants big enough to eat a human. The most famous example of this is the Madagascar tree. An article was written about this tree in the New York World newspaper, describing a large tree with tendrils that the natives of Madagascar would sacrifice to. Now, the story turned out to be fake, but people back then were extremely easy to fool. Like, remember when everyone was convinced that there was an alien invasion because Orson Welles was reading War of the Worlds on the radio? Doppelganger. A doppelganger is essentially your evil twin. A doppelganger can go to your friends and relatives impersonating you and potentially mess up your whole life. Seeing your own doppelganger signifies death, so if you see your doppelganger, you either have to kill it or die. So watch your back, Eddie Burback. Ghoul. Ghouls actually originate in Arabian folklore, specifically in Arabian Nights. The creatures are associated with graveyards and consuming human flesh. Ghouls started gaining popularity in Western culture in the late 1700s. It's said that ghouls who are well fed on human flesh are indistinguishable from normal humans. The longer a ghoul goes without feeding, the less human it looks. A ghoul in the later stages of starvation will be extremely thin and pale with veins clearly visible through the skin, and will have long claw-like nails. Here's apparently a not fake video of a ghoul that looks to be in the later stages of starvation. Okapi. The okapi is a former cryptid. Long believed to be a myth, the okapi, or the forest giraffe, is the giraffe's closest relative. Prior to the early 1900s, the elusive okapi was just an urban legend. In fact, they were so rare that it was nicknamed the African unicorn. And this shit does look like a unicorn. Remember earlier how I was like, you might actually see one? Well, here you go. Wanderlight. Wanderlights, or will-o'-the-wisps, are strange lights that appear in the night over swamps. It looks like an orb of light hovering directly above the water. There's only one high-res image of an alleged wanderlight that was taken off the coast of Finland. They were thought to at one point be sprites or fairies who lured people into the water. They're also known as jack-o'-lanterns. Now, these things are definitely real. They might not be living beings, but there's something. Scientists speculate that they could be bubbles of methane that ignite upon contact with oxygen. Ifrit. An ifrit is a type of jinn. In Arabic folklore, they are depicted as enormous winged creatures who live underground. They have a social structure with kings, tribes, clans, you know, all that good stuff. Ordinary weapons have no effect on them. Apparently, stories of ifrits were common in Egypt up until World War II. British soldiers who visited the pyramids reported that the locals would warn them about ifrits. The Beast of Exmoor. The Beast of Exmoor is a phantom cat or an alien cat. Now, when I say that, I don't actually mean that it's a phantom or an alien. It's just a phrase which refers to big cats who are spotted outside of their indigenous areas. The Exmoor beast is a large black feline spotted around Exmoor, England. Now, it's not weird by itself, but I guess people are claiming all sorts of outlandish shit. Like a farmer said 100 of his sheep were killed within the span of 3 months by violent throat injuries, which he blamed on the cat. If you ask me, this motherfucker was just trying to get that insurance check. Santer. Santer is another mysterious black cat in western North Carolina. It's said to have preyed on local livestock and pets. There were multiple sightings of the creature back in the 1890s. There was even a whole newspaper article written about it back in the day. Atmospheric beasts are creatures that defy all known laws of physics and are said to fly without the use of wings. So like Purgils from Star Wars would be considered atmospheric beasts. The two most common types of atmospheric beasts are jellyfish and sky serpents. One well-known case of sky serpents is known as the Crawfordsville Monster, which appeared in Indiana in 1891. It was described by multiple witnesses as being about 20 feet long and covered in fins. It's also said to have one eye in the center of its head. Atmospheric jellyfish, on the other hand, are a type of UFO that have been seen multiple times throughout the world. The first sighting of one of these bad boys occurred in 1977 in Petrovodsk, Russia, when a man took this photo. Some other well-known appearances are the Dutch flying jellyfish and the king king yen flying jellyfish. Avians are bird-like creatures which are generally believed to be aliens. The first report of these creatures was in 1968 by a French researcher. Now this report was published in a magazine called Flying Saucer Review, so take this with a glass of salt. The article claims that this French dude was driving down the street when he saw a group of people blocking his car, except they weren't people, they were bird people, covered in feathers. Shortly after they noticed him, they began to attack his vehicle, so he drove off in a panic. He then said he stopped his car once he was a safe distance away, only to see them flying up to some kind of spacecraft that resembled, and I quote, two plates upside down, placed one on top of the other. Once they boarded the UFO, it quickly flew off and disappeared. Now, true believers will take this story and point out that the ancient Sumerians also had depictions of avian people, so maybe the Anunnaki weren't lizard people, but bird people. Black-eyed children. Black-eyed children are children with black eyes, and I don't mean they got punched in the face. They're described as being pale with their entire eyes being pitch black. Now these little schmucks are real jerks. It's said that looking into their eyes causes intense fear and even hypnosis. One account of an interaction with these creatures was written by a man named Brian Bethel on Abilene Reporter News. I had to go into the Wayback Machine for this bad boy because it got scrubbed from the internet or something. He alleged in the article that two young children came up to him while he was in his car and asked him for a ride to their house. He said all of a sudden he was overtaken by an extreme fear for no reason. Then he noticed that the boys had pitch black eyes that he described as soulless orbs. At this point his brain was in full freakout mode, and he gave the kids some excuse as to why he couldn't give them a ride, and he started to back out of the parking lot. As soon as he started leaving, one of the kids yelled at him, "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in!"
Let me in! Let me in!
Then Brian soiled himself and peeled out. Black stickmen. A more recent phenomenon, people across the globe have been citing these two-dimensional pitch black beings. Their heights range from that of a normal human to abnormal several feet tall. Dark fairy. Now when I say dark fairy, you're probably thinking to yourself, what the fuck is this, Neopets? But no, it's not Neopets, because dark fairies are apparently real. Don't believe me? Take a look at this photo taken in Newport, Wales. At one point, belief in fairies was somewhat widespread to the point where there was an organization called the Fairy Investigation Society, with such notable members as Walt Disney. But let's be honest, that's only like the 9th weirdest thing related to Walt Disney. These days, sightings have kind of died off, but every now and then people claim to see a fairy-looking creatures at night. I mean, look at this photo. Oh wait, I already showed you guys this one. Well, I guess I have nothing more to say then. Men in Black. Ooh, I couldn't wait to get to this one. Now, most of us, when we think of Men in Black, we think of the blockbuster film franchise starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. But apparently those movies are based on an actual conspiracy theory that there's a government agency dedicated to covering up supernatural and extraterrestrial events. The Men in Black are known to harass, threaten, or even assassinate UFO witnesses to keep them quiet. The first documented appearance of the Men in Black was by a band named Harold Dahl. The story goes like this. It's 1947. Harold Dahl is in a boat off the coast of Maury Island in Washington State with his son and dog. All of a sudden, he looks up and sees 6 donut-shaped objects about half a mile above. After a while, one of them falls, and then debris starts falling from the sky as well. A piece of the debris hits his son on the arm and kills his dog. Dahl alleges he took some pictures of the craft, which he then showed to his boss, who was skeptical at first, but then decided to check it out for himself and saw the craft with his own 2 eyes. The next day, Dahl was visited by a man in a black suit. The man invited him over to a local diner where he told Dahl he basically already knew what happened, and if Dahl said anything, bad things would happen. Now, apparently Dahl admitted that the story was a hoax, but come on, man. If you believe in the Men in Black, it's very easy to just say, oh, they intimidated him into retracting his story. Metal Man. Falkville, Alabama, 1973. Jeff Greenhaw, a police officer, gets a call about a spaceship spotted out in the field. When he arrives on the scene, there was no spaceship to be seen. Instead, he saw a figure known as Metal Man. The alien was clad in a suit that was similar to a thick aluminum foil, intensely bright and smooth as glass. Its movements were childlike or even monkey-like, but at the same time very robotic and mechanical, according to Greenhaw. Also, he conveniently had his camera on him, which he used to snap 4 photos of the entity before it ran off to speeds that, according to Greenhaw, exceeded that of any human he'd ever seen. But keep in mind, this was long before Usain Bolt. Flying Horse. This one's referring to a UFO that resembled a flying horse spotted over Mexico. Man, that shit kind of looked like a Pegasus. The Michigan Dogman. The Michigan Dogman is a human-wolf hybrid, possibly a werewolf creature that has been spotted in and around Michigan. Tales of the Dogman go back over 100 years when two lumberjacks allegedly encountered a 7-foot-tall, blue-eyed, bipedal canine-like animal with the torso of a man and a fearsome howl that sounds like a human scream. There's been many sightings since then, and it's also been speculated that the Michigan Dogman and the Beast of the Bray Road could possibly be the same entity. Shadow people. I don't think any other entry on this list has creeped me out as much as this one. A shadow person is a living shadow which can be seen in the corner of people's eyes. They vanish as soon as the person realizes what they saw, and the most commonly reported version of one of these beings is the Hat Man. He's described as wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a long trench coat. Kind of sounds like a neckbeard so far. Does he also wear socks and sandals? Oh gosh. He invokes a feeling of intense fear. Scientists attribute this phenomenon to sleep paralysis, which, okay, that makes sense. I've had sleep paralysis before. Like, I woke up and I couldn't move and I saw the kid from The Grudge in my fucking closet. So, I mean, it's definitely real, but why are people seeing this specific guy? I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to get too far into it, man, because like I said, it gives me the heebie-jeebies, as they say. The Toronto aerial jellyfish. Now, in the previous layer, I talked about aerial beasts and aerial jellyfishes in particular, so I'm not going to get too far into this one. Also, I couldn't find bupkis about this. Literally, the only place I can find information about this particular cryptid is on the Cryptid wiki, which, as we know, should not be taken as anything credible. Honestly, the more research I do for this tier list, the more this wiki pisses me off. It's everything your teachers told you Wikipedia is, but Wikipedia at least cites their fucking sources most of the time. The Cryptid wiki just makes shit up. They can make up quotes and sightings, and I can't back up any of these claims because there's no other information on the internet. Like, I'm sure they just make people up and events up, and then the motherfuckers who are reading this that are brain dead and did terrible in school are like, oh my gosh, bro, this is so crazy. Society, cryptids, the government, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I went a little bit nutty there for a second, but whatever, let's move on. The Van Meter Visitor. The Van Meter Visitor refers to a strange bat-like creature that was seen around Van Meter, Iowa in 1903. It's described as being 9 feet tall, and it could shoot beams of light from a horn on top of its head. Some of the townspeople attempted to shoot the creature, but it didn't seem to be affected by bullets. Eventually, a posse was formed, as they tended to do back in those days, usually for other reasons. Anyways, they chased the monster into an abandoned coal mine where it was never seen again. Now here's a photo of the group of men who claims to have seen the visitor. I don't know about you guys, but this looks like a group of outstanding gentlemen if I've ever seen one. Also, does anybody else think that the visitor looks like a legendary Pokemon? No? Just me? Alright. Orange alligator. Speaking of Pokemon, apparently there's a shiny alligator out there somewhere. The orange alligator looks like if alligators lived on a diet of nacho cheese Doritos.
Okay, so the family says they spotted what appeared to be 2 orange alligators in a pond recently where they live.
Now, this is clearly real. Like, you can see them. I don't know why an alligator expert doesn't come out to study them. You'd think this would be like the discovery of the century if you're into reptiles, but you know, who knows. My theory is somebody spray painted these alligators to troll the community. Sewer gator. Continuing the alligator theme, the sewer gator is, you guessed it, an alligator that lives in the sewer. Now, stories about weird animals in the sewers have been around pretty much since sewers were invented. Like, we don't know what's down there, so of course people's minds are gonna wander when the unknown is involved. Anyway, stories about sewer gators are pretty common in New York, but you know how New Yorkers are, they exaggerate everything. I mean, these are the same people that think the Knicks have a chance of winning the playoffs every year. I think a sewer gator is much more likely than that happening. Anyways, alligator experts think it's very unlikely that one could
just when you thought you'd seen everything.
Yeah, bro, I guess for once, the New Yorkers were right. Hook Island sea monster. Hook Island is a small island off the coast of Queensland, Australia, and it's a popular vacation spot for people down under. It's known for beautiful beaches, clear waters, and a giant sea monster. Now, you may look at this photo and think that it was Photoshop, but it's actually just a colorized version of this image, which was taken back in the 60s. And to my knowledge, Photoshop hadn't been invented yet, but hey, I could be wrong. This giant tadpole-looking creature is estimated to be about 80 feet long, and there's even a close-up picture depicting its eyes if you weren't convinced by the other photo. Colossal squid. I pretty much already covered this in the first layer. I'm not going to rehash it again. Pukwudgie. A pukwudgie is a creature that exists in the folklore of the Native American Wampanoag people. They look kind of like a cross between a goblin and a porcupine. Pukwudgies have a lot of mystical powers, but their best one is the ability to appear and disappear at will. They're also known to not be very friendly towards humans, but hey, can you blame them? The only evidence of the existence is this very clearly fake photo. The Grassman, or the Ohio Grassman as he's also known, is a potential member of the Sasquatch species. This guy allegedly lives in the forests of Ohio, where he was spotted by two men hiking at Sauk Fork State Park. Looks pretty convincing to me. There's also a video to go along with that photo, but this has been deleted off YouTube, probably by the government. What are you trying to hide, huh? Oh, and that wasn't even the first sighting of the Grassman. The first sighting was in 1978 in Minerva, Ohio by a man named Hal Kayon. In an interview with Fox News, Hal claimed that the Grassman was aggressive and threw rocks at his house and even killed his German Shepherd. A true menace to society. Kitsune. Ugh. All the furries and weebs just creamed their pants. In Japanese legends, a kitsune was a fox who had the ability to turn into a human. Basically like a fox werewolf. They were known for being highly intelligent and cunning, and it's said that the more tails they had, the wiser they were, and it could go up to 9 tails. So I'm guessing that's where Ninetales from Pokemon comes from. The most terrifying thing about these creatures is the modern day artwork of them. You fucking degenerates. The Minnesota Dogman. Similar to the Beast of Bray Road and the Michigan Dogman, the Minnesota Dogman is another Midwestern human-dog hybrid. There are only a few sightings of this mutt, the first of which being at an Air Force base in 1999. A man was working the late shift patrol duty when he claims he saw a pair of eyes reflecting at him in the night. Whatever it was looking at him ran away, and he followed it with his truck. Bad move, dude. Have you ever seen a horror movie? That never ends well. Well, except for in this case, because the dude was fine. Anyways, he said the creature was wolf-like and was about the same height of his truck. The second sighting took place in Fergus Fall, Wisconsin in 2009. A man was driving down the road when he noticed 3 deer not too far off. As he stopped to look at the deer, he noticed something else. He said it looked like a wolf standing on its 2 legs, and he even noticed it had a couple of opposable thumbs. He also said it was about 7 feet tall. The third and final alleged sighting was in a town called Long Prairie. A man was out hunting squirrels one morning. That's weird. When he claims to have seen a, quote, humanoid dog thing. He shot at it a couple of times and he heard a yelp before he saw the creature running off. The weirdest part about this story is the guy was hunting squirrels. Why are you doing that, bro? The fuck? Ogre. An ogre is a legendary monster who resembles a human, but bigger and fatter. Oh, and also their favorite snack is apparently human babies. Ogres are known to be complicated beings with many layers, similar to an onion. Now, while I was doing research for this iceberg, I came across this old painting of an ogre. And see that in the bottom left? That's Puss in Boots, bro, from Shrek. I thought DreamWorks made up Puss in Boots, but no, he actually comes from an Italian fairy tale from the 1600s. There is truly nothing original anymore. Anyways, ogres can be conflated with giants and vice versa, and they have a lot of the same characteristics. Sirens. Sirens were sexy bird women from Greek mythology whose beautiful voices would lure sailors into a shipwreck. Now, these days when people think of sirens, they typically think of an evil mermaid, half woman, half fish, but originally, no, they were half woman, half bird. Now, Pliny the Elder, the famous Roman historian, stated that sirens are just a fable. So if this dude 2,000 years ago didn't believe in them, then it's time to move on. Sheep Squatch. You thought Bat Squatch was weird? Wait till you hear about Sheep Squatch. The depictions of this thing are absolutely terrifying. Like, when I first heard the name, I was like, oh, it's gonna be cute. It's gonna be like this little sheep. No! It's genuinely terrifying. Can you guess where it's from? Yup. West Virginia, just like every other fucking thing on this list apparently. Anyway, Sheep Squatch has been seen at least 4 times, with the first 4 sightings being in 1994 and the latest one being in 2015. Now, despite the depictions of it, most people who claim to have seen it described it as being a white bear covered in wool that stands on its 2 legs. There's not really any mention of horns or anything. Also, despite its appearance, it's apparently afraid of people, with most witnesses claiming that it ran away from them and screamed. The Cerro Azul Monster. Now, I touched on this one briefly in the first layer. Remember I made that joke? Panama creature who looks kind of like your mom after a few glasses of Chardonnay. Anyways, the Cerro Azul monster is also known as the Panama creature, which is an unidentified species that washed up on the shore in Panama. Now, the weird thing about this is that the teenagers who discovered it claimed that it approached them and they killed it in self-defense. An autopsy was actually done on the creature, which concluded that it was a brown-throated sloth, and its hairless appearance was the result of decomposition due to the water. But I don't know, man. I don't trust those autopsy guys. They could have been paid off by the men in black. Chilean blob. This one is another globster. The Chilean blob was a large mass of tissue that washed up on the beaches of Chile in 2003. It weighed about 14 tons, and it was originally thought to be some kind of species of giant octopus, but it was later discovered in 2004 that it was actually the body of a sperm whale. Took y'all a whole year to figure that out, man? Really? Cyclops shark. Man, this one kind of looks like
Wazowski.
I actually remember seeing this on Facebook years ago, thinking it was another fake post to trick boomers into sharing it, but no, this is real. Unfortunately, this isn't some new species of shark because it was found in the belly of an adult shark, but it's actually an insanely rare double mutated shark. I say double mutated because not only does it only have one eye, but it's also albino. Poor guy never had a chance. Manipogo. Okay, so we talked about Ogopogo. Now we're going to talk about his brother, Manipogo. The name Manipogo is actually a riff on the more well-known Ogopogo combined with Manitoba, the lake which it's said to inhabit. The legend of Manipogo goes back more than 100 years. The first sighting was in 1909 by a fur trader who reported a massive creature within the water. Sightings continued throughout the years, and people claim that they see some kind of monster swimming in the waters to this very day. Platypus. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, platypus ain't no cryptid. Platypus is real. Well, you're right, so calm down. The reason it's on this list is because it was originally thought to be a hoax. People thought someone sewed a duckbill and web feed onto a beaver. And I mean, if you really think about it, can you blame them for being skeptical? I mean, a platypus makes no sense. It's a mammal that lays eggs and also has venom. Like, if you've never heard of a platypus, you'd probably think it's horseshit. I mean, it goes against everything we previously knew about biology. So that's why in the field of cryptozoology, the platypus is so important, because it gives them hope that one day they might be able to find another platypus and prove all the haters wrong. And this is far from the only case of something like this happening. I mean, I mentioned the African unicorn before. Kiwa hirsuta, or yeti crab, is a crustacean discovered in 2005 in the Antarctic Ocean. When it was discovered, scientists thought it was just a one-off species and no other similar creatures could possibly exist. So it was essentially a cryptid amongst the marine biologist community until more species were discovered. Sewer creatures. We previously talked about sewer gators. Now, it's been generally agreed that alligators cannot survive in sewers for an extended period of time. I don't believe that for a second, but whatever. Let's move past that. Alligators aren't the only animals speculated to live in sewers in New York. In fact, the 1850s there were stories involving sewer hogs. In a Daily Telegraph article from 1859 it was stated, Hampstead sewers shelter a monstrous breed of black swine which have propagated and run wild among the slimy fetulence. I can't pronounce anything, dog. But you know what? Until somebody goes down into those sewers and explores every inch of those dookie infested pipes, you can't say it's not true. Apart from pigs and gators, there's also weirder stuff, like the Cameron Village sewer blob. In 2009, a South Carolina construction company sent a surveillance camera into the sewer pipes beneath Cameron Village. What they found was, I don't really know how to describe it, so here's a video. Yo, pardon my language, but what the fudge is that? That shit looks like my right nut. Bro, I don't know what that is, but somebody needs to figure that out before it spreads. Komodo dragon. Similar to the platypus, back in the day, Komodo dragons were just a rumor amongst Europeans. They were probably like, oh yeah, an 8-foot-long lizard with toxic spit? Give me a break with this baloney. But they later came to find out that this mother sucker is 100% certified. Ropin. Somewhere in the jungles of Papua New Guinea there exists a giant flying creature known as the ropin. It's thought by some to be just a large species of bat. After all, the largest bats have a wingspan of like 5.5 feet. However, it's also been described as having a pterodactyl-like features, including a long tail, a long beak-like snout, and that don't sound like no bat to me. Now, the weirdest thing is, apparently it also emits light. It was first sighted in 1935 by biologist Evelyn Cheeseman, who was pretty reputable, by the way. And she also claimed that the creatures glowed. Now, the ropin existed in the folklore of the native Papua New Guineans. Is that what they're called? Oh, they're actually called Papuans. Interesting. Drop bear. A drop bear is a giant koala that eats people. Here's an artist's depiction of a drop bear. Really, bro? You just photoshopped cartoon fangs onto a koala. That's the best you could do? Whatever. Not even cryptozoologists think this one's real, so I'm not going to waste my time with it. Orangutan. Now, despite its name, it's not actually a relative of the orangutan. Actually, it's thought to somehow be related to Sasquatch because of its similar characteristics. Orangutans are said to be between 7 to 12 feet tall and covered with dark, bushy hair. The orangutan is generally thought to be peaceful, except for one incident. In 2013, a group of wild monkeys went on a rampage in an Indonesian village. The group of 10 monkeys attacked people and ransacked their homes. This isn't typical behavior for monkeys who usually avoid people. Also, some people describe the monkeys as being 4 to 5 feet tall and having no tails, so possibly orangutan babies. Okay, but wouldn't everyone notice if that was the case? Like, if a group of 10 5-foot-tall gorillas attacked a town, there would be no room for debate, like, oh, maybe they were monkeys, no, maybe they were good. No! Stop it. Get some help. Well, there you have it. Part 1 of the Cryptid Iceberg. This was originally supposed to be all one video, but I quickly figured out there was no way that was going to happen. It would be like 4 hours long. Anyways, I put a ton of time and effort into this one. I even reshot it once because I wasn't satisfied with the original draft. So I would really appreciate if you guys showed this one in particular some love. So if you liked it, give it a like. Maybe even give me a subscribe. If not, tell me you hate me and that I'm scum. Also, as always, let me know in the comments what you guys think. And thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, guys. Later.